Story 4, joining us from our Parliament studios in Cape Town, Wynona Louw, Cape Times rugby reporter. Wynona, thank you very much for joining us on Sports on Prime. Listening to that package from Craig Murray, he speaks about shambles in South African rugby. 2 days is what has been set aside in this Indaba to try and sort it out. Is that enough? I think that's where we need to start.
Thanks for having me firstly. No, definitely. It's quite obvious that there's been a lot of problems in South African rugby. It started last year already, not with a poor effort against Ireland. I think the Indaba couldn't have come at a better time. It's really needed now, and there's a lot of issues that they need to address. From administrative issues. So there's a lot of things that need to be done before we can even think of solving the on-field problems. And I do think that definitely none of us can predict what the Indaba is going to serve up or the results thereof, but it's definitely a start.
I mean, I look at the coaches. I mean, it's the coaches in Indaba. I was looking at some of the pictures. You were there throughout the whole day. And the first thing that comes to mind, transformation surely is top of the agenda as well. Cricket seems to be on the right track. They're winning, although skeptical by former players about transformed players. But, well, they went ahead and they beat Australia 5-0. The Springboks, a lot of people saying, we don't care as long as they transform. We don't care how much they lose to New Zealand or the All Blacks or even Ireland, but rather a team that is transformed, the one that is really non-transformed and losing by 57-15.
Now, look, I believe transformation, especially in rugby, is definitely something that needs to be addressed. I think it's the sport where it's kind of needed most, especially if you look at more junior ranks of rugby or at junior levels. There are a lot of talented younger black players, and I just feel like, they need to be nurtured, but same with all athletes, whether you're black or white. But I think there's definitely a place for transformation, and it is, especially with the target set now for the next World Cup. Be it as it may, they need to start working on that now, and you can argue that this could have been prevented, if transformation was made more of a priority or prioritized more 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So now it's kind of like the rugby nation has to hustle to get those targets in place. But I think we can argue that's something it should have been done long ago, but. It definitely is needed in rugby, and we can just start now, and I think hopefully that's also one of the issues that this Indaba will address.
Was it touched on maybe today, or do you have an idea on what the is going to be touched on or spoken to or at, and as far as Indaba is concerned, or the media outside until everything's sorted out?
Now, look, we didn't attend the whole of the Indaba today. We were only there for the introduction with Allister Coetzee. But he did mention transformation, so it's definitely on the agenda. And, I guess I can really not offer you any more answers than that, but I think we'll know a bit more after tomorrow. But he definitely did mention it, and it was on the agenda, yes.
I looked at Allister Coetzee addressing all the coaches and the former coaches and some players, and the one thing that struck me, and a lot of us, we're sitting here, I think I saw 3-4 faces of color. The whole room still belongs to an old boys former, white club, if I can just put it bluntly. And I think that's probably where the problem starts. A lot of people saying, what is it going to solve when the people who so-called matter are not there, with the exception of Allister Coetzee?
Look, that was kind of the makeup of the room. I think that a lot of focus now is on transformation in terms of, player selection and players themselves. But it also has to go much further, so it's transformation, something in rugby that should be, it should affect all positions, from coaching or personnel to players. So there's no point in trying to completely transform the Bok team, it has to come from the core. So there's definitely still a long way to go in that regard, but we'll see what this dishes up.
I mean, you're a rugby reporter, that's your beat, you deal with it day in and day out. The one thing that, again, a lot of people say, look, rugby in this country is run by All Boys Club. I'll go back to the game, the Lions, they're the dominant because they have the money, the Sharks, the Bulls, and somewhere, in the middle falls in Province. Is there a semblance of who's dominating the conversation from where you're standing as a journalist on the outside looking in? Because obviously that steers the direction one way or the other.
I can't really say, but I would just think that, of course, looking at the people involved or the people who were in attendance today, I think that you have to look at the, like you said now, the record of the Super Rugby franchises or teams. Obviously, a coach like Frankie Smith or even Johan Ackerman, their contributions that's crucial. And I think that, especially in paving the way or moving forward towards a common goal, or just a similar approach in rugby, people like those two have performed. I mean, look at the Cheetahs, look at the Lions, and they have not had the best season, but of course there was a lot of, they lost a lot of players to Springbok selection. But those teams have been paving the way, so I think it only makes sense for coaches like those, kind of to step up and also, add their valuable input to the Indaba.
I mean, I think of the Lions, you mentioned them. I mean, the past 2 seasons, I think Ackerman has played a crucial role. I mean, a young coach. But again, you mentioned the fact that they had got they had those Springboks throughout the year. The question then comes in, there was talk about probably Springbok rugby or South African rugby adopting their style of play. But after this drubbing of the weekend, what do you think? What are your thoughts personally as a rugby writer?
Yeah, it's a complicated one. I think... Firstly, I think the biggest problem with the Springboks this year has been the fact that it seems like they have had no game plan. So I think they firstly just need to decide on what they want to employ, what kind of game plan, what kind of rugby they want to play, and everything else comes after that, from player selection and all of that. So I think they need to figure out to determine what will work for them in that regard, when it comes to like a game structure or plan. And then, selecting players on form or the, suitable players will only come after that. But I think that's definitely the first thing that needs to be sorted out, game plan, and then they can start working on, like I said, player selection, retention, and all those other matters.
Yeah. Is it a question of maybe the rest of the world has caught up to the old way South Africa played, and maybe we need to think forward? Because my thoughts sometimes say we've been left behind as far as world rugby is concerned. The fact that we can lose to the islands and your Japans.
So sorry, can you just repeat the last one?
I'm saying, is it a question of maybe the rest of the world has caught up to the way the Springboks formerly played, and they've moved on, and we are left behind, hence we can lose to the likes of Japan and the islands of this world? We need to play catch-up all of a sudden.
Yeah, it's they need to, like I said earlier, it's rugby's evolving, worldwide. If you look at a team like Argentina, for example, that's a completely different outfit to what they were 3 years ago. And, there's a common goal, even at, if you look at teams like Japan and then obviously New Zealand, the common thing now between them is the brand of rugby, or at least a brand of rugby that they're trying to play. So it's not about South Africa having to catch up, it's a bit more complicated than that. I think that once the coaching staff decided that's the kind of rugby that we should be playing, then they need to start taking the appropriate measures, from coaching staff to players and all of that. And of course, the mental shift. There needs to be a change in mindset. You can't coach something or attempt to play it if you don't fully believe in it. And I mean, even if you just, a simple example, if we don't even have to go to test level rugby, just look at the Lions, for example. Do you know with how John Mitchell changed all of that, and Johan Ackerman just worked on it and he carried it through, and look at their results. Again, this year hasn't been the best to look at, but generally speaking. So it's, I think, a mental change firstly is needed once they decide, which way they want to go.
We run out of time. One more question, if you can quickly wrap it for us. Do we write off this season as far as the Springbok and South African rugby is concerned? Let Allister start with a clean slate, and we look on, well, hopefully come Rugby World Cup, everything's sorted. We're playing a winning brand of rugby.
I think Allister, the way things are now, or with the past results this year, or this season, I won't say it's too late to kind of salvage it, but I definitely think there's no better time than now to start building towards the next World Cup. Yes, a few tests haven't gone South Africa's way, but it's now as good a time as ever to start building towards the next World Cup, and that will, in terms of captaincy, we will captain the Springboks. The kind of players you want to select now, give some test experience and groom for the next World Cup. I don't believe there's a better time than now to start with all of those preparations.
Wynona Louw, Cape Times rugby reporter, thank you very much for speaking to us from our Parliament studios. Hopefully we'll be hearing from you. It's actually quite good speaking to a female rugby reporter instead of the usual men speaking to us. Wynona, thank you very much for speaking to us. We'll take a quick break on Sports and Prime. When we return, more sports stories for you, and we got a little bit of surprise at the end of the show. Stay with us.